and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Raisha Sehgal. In a historic and sweeping Independence Day speech, Prime Minister Modi declared that India will not bow down to external tariff pressures, further vowing to protect farmers and push for self-reliance. Meanwhile, the world braces for the high-stakes Trump-Putin summit in Alaska. We will get you the big highlights from both the stories that we are tracking very closely. Let's get you started.
Newer sensibilities and needs and
भारत के किसान, भारत के मछुआरे, भारत के पशुपालक, उनसे जुड़ी किसी भी अहितकारी नीति के आगे मोदी दीवार बन के खड़ा है। न्यूक्लियर की धमकियों को अब हम सहने वाले नहीं। सेना जो लक्ष्य तय करे उस लक्ष्य को अब हम अमल में ला करके रहेंगे। समय को मोड़ देने का भी यही समय है, सही समय है।
It is India's 79th Independence Day, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi took the stage at the Red Fort today to deliver not just the longest Independence Day speech in India's history, but also one of the most consequential. A 103-minute marathon packed with announcements that will reshape India's economic and technological future, all coming at a time of global uncertainty and the high-stakes Trump-Putin summit in Alaska. Prime Minister Modi has outlined a roadmap to make India self-reliant by 2047, pledging to empower youth, boost businesses and also navigate a turbulent global economy. Well, the timing could not be more critical. Within hours, Trump and Putin will meet in Alaska to hold talks that will shape Ukraine's future and also directly affect India's economy. Why? Because US tariffs imposed on India unfairly for purchasing Russian oil could perhaps get worse. In recent weeks, Trump has slapped a 50% tariff on Indian exports, higher than ones imposed on America's rivals, threatening nearly 1% of India's GDP. The 25% extra penalty was imposed on India, with warnings that it could double if the Alaska talks fail. A twisted way to make India a scapegoat as far as America has failed to bring peace in Ukraine. That's the condition. In this climate, Prime Minister Modi's announcements are pointed and big. First, a Diwali GST gift. The Prime Minister promised next generation GST reforms which will lower taxes on essentials and also bring relief for MSMEs, local vendors and consumers. A new reform task force which will drive changes aimed at a $10 trillion economy by 2047. Second, jobs. The PM Viksit Bharat Rozgar Yojana with a budget of nearly rupees 1 lakh crore. The scheme aims to create 3.5 crore jobs over 2 years. Young people entering private sector jobs for the first time will now get rupees 15,000 a month in financial aid. Third, tech independence by year end. India will have its first made in India semiconductor chip in the market, and that's huge. Prime Minister Modi called technology the driver of 21st century growth and further pledged to position India among its leaders. Fourth, nuclear energy reform. India will open its nuclear sector to private players, aiming to expand capacity 12-fold, and that's by 2047. This Prime Minister Modi said is key to ending dependence on foreign energy alongside massive solar and dam projects which are already underway. And in a sharp national security statement, the Prime Minister declared that India will not tolerate nuclear threats and will not bow to blackmail as well. So, on a day of pageantry, history and patriotism, the speech was both a roadmap and a reminder that India will follow its own course, working with others where it can and standing tall where it must. And well, from the ramparts of Delhi's Red Fort on India's 79th Independence Day, Prime Minister Modi sent two very clear messages. One to Washington, D.C. and the other to Pakistan. First, to the United States. In the face of steep new tariffs and penalty threats from the Trump administration, the Prime Minister declared that India is unstoppable. Without naming the U.S. directly, Prime Minister Modi declared that this is the time for India to prove its mettle in global markets. And that's by lowering manufacturing costs and selling quality goods that can rule the world. He said in Hindi, and I'm quoting him here, "Daam kam, dam zyada," which translates to less price, more value. And that's the new mantra for a strong India. This has been the Modi government's reaction to Trump's trade tantrums since they were announced as well.
विश्व बाजार में अपने सामर्थ्य का लोहा मनवाना है तो हमें क्वालिटी में निरंतर नई ऊंचाइयों को पार करना। दुनिया क्वालिटी को स्वीकार करती है, हमारी गुणवत्ता सबसे ज्यादा हो और सरकार के भी प्रयास हो, रॉ मटेरियल की भी उपलब्धि हो, हमारी प्रोडक्शन की कॉस्ट कैसे कम हो, हम उसमें दम रह गए। और साथियों, हम सभी जो उत्पादन के क्षेत्र में लगे हैं, उन सबका मंत्र होना चाहिए, दाम कम लेकिन दम ज्यादा। हमारी हर प्रोडक्ट का दम ज्यादा हो लेकिन दाम कम हो। इस भाव को लेकर के हमें आगे बढ़ना है।
Remember, Washington decided to double the tariffs on Indian goods to 50% earlier this month in retaliation for India's purchase of Russian oil. India has called the move unfair, unjustified and unreasonable, warning that it will hit key sectors like textiles and leather exports. Prime Minister Modi has urged Indian traders to proudly promote Swadeshi and Made in India goods. He has also promised to stand like a wall to protect farmers in the face of the economic pressure that America has been imposing on India. But that was not the only message from the Red Fort by the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Modi also sent a message to India's troublesome neighbor. We're talking about Pakistan. Just 3 months after the worst conflict between the two countries in decades, Prime Minister Modi warned that if there are future Pakistan-sponsored terror attacks on Indian soil, Pakistan will be punished. He asserted India's new normal on terror state Pakistan and rejected Islamabad's nuclear blackmail as well.
आतंको और आतंकी को पालने पोसने वालों को, आतंकियों को ताकत देने वालों को अब हम अलग अलग नहीं मानेंगे। भारत ने तय कर लिया है कि न्यूक्लियर की धमकियों को अब हम सहने वाले नहीं हैं। न्यूक्लियर ब्लैकमेल लंबे अरसे से चलाया, अब वो ब्लैकमेल नहीं सहा जाएगा।
Remember, for 4 days, India retaliated to Pakistan's aerial attacks on India. And that's after India's Operation Sindoor, which dismantled terror hubs, terror infrastructure in Pakistan. India's operation came after terrorists killed 26 people, mostly Hindu tourists, in Jammu and Kashmir's Pahalgam in April this year. Prime Minister Modi has also hinted that India will continue its suspension of the Indus Water Treaty, declaring that blood and water will not flow together. So, from tariffs to terror, India's Independence Day message is clear and unmistakable. India will not bow to pressure, whether it comes from Washington or from across the border in Islamabad. And well, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Therani is joining us live from New York. Hi, Susan. First up, of course, what do you make of Prime Minister Modi's message to the US that it will not bow down to any kind of external tariff pressures, especially in the backdrop of Trump saying yesterday that Putin is rattled by high tariffs on India?
Yeah, it was clear that Prime Minister Modi's message was a clear response to escalating U.S. pressure, and without naming the United States directly, Prime Minister Modi really made clear that he is delivering a nationalist message and that India won't bow down. Meanwhile, I also thought it was interesting that Secretary of State Marco Rubio from Washington, D.C. wished India well on its Independence Day, and also said, quote unquote, that India and the United States have consequential and far-reaching ties between the two democracies. So we're seeing that while economic pressure mounts on the one hand, how important it is for the United States to continue this all-encompassing, not just trade, but all-encompassing relationship with India.
Right, Susan, thanks for joining us here in Gravitas, but stay with us. We'll be coming back to you in just a short while from now. Well, Prime Minister Modi's 79th Independence Day address carried a clear warning, a warning against what he called a deliberate conspiracy to change India's demography, a warning against infiltration, illegal settlement, and the security risks they bring. From the Red Fort, the Prime Minister declared that such activities threaten livelihoods, endanger communities, and will not be tolerated. And so, to counter the threat, the Prime Minister announced the launch of a high-powered demography mission, a mission to identify and tackle the dangers posed by illegal immigration.
मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, मैं आज देश के सामने एक चिंता, एक चुनौती के संबंध में आगाह करना चाहता हूं। षड्यंत्र के तहत, सोची समझी साजिश के तहत देश की डेमोग्राफी को बदला जा रहा है। एक नए संकट के बीज बोए जा रहे हैं और ये घुसपैठिए मेरे देश के नौजवानों की रोजी रोटी छीन रहे हैं। एक घुसपैठिए मेरे देश की बहन बेटियों को निशाना बना रहे हैं। ये बर्दाश्त नहीं होगा और इसलिए मैं आज लाल किले की प्राचीर से कहना चाहता हूं, हमने एक हाई पावर्ड डेमोग्राफी मिशन शुरू करने का निर्णय किया है।
While the Prime Minister did not share specifics of the demography mission, he made it clear that what he calls illegals would be dealt with in a planned and determined manner and within a fixed time frame. Since May, several states across India have stepped up the crackdown on illegal Bangladeshi and Rohingya migrants. Prime Minister Modi's government has previously told the parliament that India is home to nearly 20 million Bangladeshi illegal immigrants. In fact, not just that, the issue of infiltration was not new to the Prime Minister's speech. It was the central campaign theme for the BJP during the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. The current drive has only drawn sharp criticism from the opposition, especially the Trinamool Congress, which alleges that Bengali-speaking migrants are also being targeted under the guise of an anti-illegal immigration push. But Prime Minister Modi in his speech has emphasized that demographic changes in border areas pose a threat to national security and can fuel conflict. Illegal immigration, authorities have said in the past, disproportionately impacts tribal and backward communities. Migrants are accused of misleading Adivasis and encroaching on their lands, leading to loss of livelihood and erosion of cultural heritage. With Prime Minister Modi's demography mission, the aim will perhaps be to protect these communities by preserving land rights and also promoting social harmony. Well, among Prime Minister Modi's slew of big announcements in his Independence Day speech was one on the launch of Mission Sudarshan Chakra. This is an indigenous defense technology similar to that of Israel's Iron Dome. The initiative could completely change the nature of India's defense systems. Here's more.
आने वाले 10 साल 2035 तक मैं ये राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा कवच का विस्तार करना चाहता हूं, मजबूती देना चाहता हूं, आधुनिक बनाना चाहता हूं और इसलिए भगवान श्री कृष्ण से प्रेरणा पाकर के हमने श्री कृष्ण का जो सुदर्शन चक्र था उस सुदर्शन चक्र की राह को चुना है.
The announcement marks the start of a project that could exponentially boost India's defense systems. Amid rising threats from Pakistan, the Sudarshan Chakra aims to be in service by 2035. The goal is to protect all critical national sites. The Sudarshan Chakra mission is based on the S-400 platform but modified with indigenous technology. It will be a multi-layered air defense technology with radars capable of detecting incoming danger from as far as 600 kilometers away. It will be expected to simultaneously track over 300 targets. It aims for a seamless integration with existing systems.
Integration of these three systems with the hypersonic weapons, with precision-guided munitions, with direct energy weapons, and these are going to be totally integrated with the air defense system.
Let's get you a sense of where India stands as of now on the air defense front. Earlier this year, the Indian Air Force used its Russian-made S-400 missile defense system to stop an aerial attack by Pakistan. The strike, aimed at military locations in north and west of India, came after Operation Sindoor. The Sudarshan Chakra is a significant upgrade. Such a Herculean initiative will obviously take years to build. But India has a clear timeline in mind, with the goal of getting the system in service by 2035.
Phase 1, it is going to be the research and development trials, so from 2025 to 2027. In phase 2 is going to be development and scaling from 2028 to 2031. In phase 3, it will be testing and piloting from 2032 to 2034. And in phase 4 is going to be the deployment in 2035.
The cost of building the system has not been disclosed, but to give you some perspective, India signed a $5.4 billion deal with Russia for 5 S-400 units in 2018. Once the system is ready, India will be able to carry out upgrades as per its own need and convenience. Since the source code is also India's own, something that is not possible with the S-400. At the moment, there are 2 such domes which exist in the world. The first is Israel's Iron Dome, introduced in the 2010s. It is famed for its multi-layered protection against aerial attacks, but it was severely tested during the attacks by Iran earlier this year. Israel has reportedly spent around $3.6 billion on the Iron Dome till now, with strong US aid. The US itself has envisioned a golden dome, which was announced by President Donald Trump. It is a comprehensive missile defense architecture designed to safeguard the nation from all external threats. The regional threat posed by Pakistan means India has to prioritize its air defense systems. And with the indigenous Sudarshan Chakra mission, India has made a big statement. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Well, India's 79th Independence Day celebration saw the Jawans, the soldiers of our country, in new avatars, performing fearless stunts, displaying the strength and might of the Indian Army and mesmerizing the audiences at the borders. Take a look. In just a few hours from now, US President Donald Trump will hold a high-stakes summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. The two leaders will discuss a ceasefire deal for Ukraine to help end the deadliest war in Europe since World War II. Well, the fate of Ukraine hangs in the balance after over 3 years of war. The death toll is in the hundreds of thousands. Entire cities have been wiped off the map. And now, the front line is shifting again, with Russia mounting a dangerous new push on Donetsk. In this next report, we break down the war in cold, hard numbers. Take a look.
"3 years, hundreds of thousands of troops killed on both sides, and 20% of Ukrainian land captured by Russia. This war has been the deadliest in Europe since World War II, and specifically for Russia. 15 times deadlier than the Soviet-Afghan War, 10 times bloodier than Chechnya. The fighting has been fierce. 24,259 battles reported in just 1 week. 24,839 air and drone strikes, 16,716 shelling attacks, and dozens of civilian attacks. In July alone, 6,200 attack drones launched by Russia, part of what is being described as a grind-down strategy that is aimed at overwhelming Ukraine's relatively weaker air defenses. What these drone swarms do is clear the way for deadlier cruise missiles to be launched. Ukraine's deep strike drones continue to hit high-value targets inside Russia, but the front line keeps shifting. Pokrovsk, a key highway and rail hub in Donetsk, is now partially encircled by Russian troops. Ukraine has rushed reinforcements to hold the line, including the Azov Brigade. But it isn't enough to hold off the Russian advance. In August, Russian forces advanced 10 kilometers beyond the front lines in Donetsk, and more settlements in eastern Ukraine continue to fall to Russian hands each day. Russia now controls 114,500 square kilometers, that's about 20% of Ukraine. It holds almost all of Luhansk, 3/4 of Donetsk, and most of Zaporizhia and Kherson. Now it is pushing to seize the rest. On Russia's target, the so-called Fortress Belt, a 50-kilometer defensive chain of cities, including Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and Konstantinivka, and the latest major Ukrainian stronghold in the east. Earlier in May, Russia seized 215 square miles of Ukrainian territory, its biggest land grab of the year. Over 3 years of war and the toll is staggering. Russia's attacks have doubled since US President Donald Trump took office 6 months ago, and so has Russia's ballistic missile production, up 66% in a year. The war has also displaced 10 million Ukrainians. That's nearly a quarter of the entire country's population. Their future and the fate of the war is in the hands of the two leaders meeting in Alaska today. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And for more on this, we're now being joined by our correspondent Susan Tehrani from New York. Hi, Susan. Thanks for staying with us. Now, while Trump has answered most of the questions aboard the Air Force One, we're also learning that he will be meeting the Russian President Vladimir Putin in his plane before the high-stakes summit in Alaska. Talk to us more about that and perhaps the chemistry and the dynamics between the two leaders.
Yeah, it's a very interesting meeting, and it's full of symbolism, of course. President Trump wanted to greet Vladimir Putin on his plane as sort of a gesture of goodwill and also respect. It's a very high-stake meeting, not only for the United States, for the president himself, showing himself as a master deal maker, but also for Vladimir Putin, who has for years been touted as sort of being isolated in Russia from European countries and even those here in the United States. This is really sort of that stamp of approval that he's coming to the United States and meeting with the president of the leader of the free world, so to say. So much for that sense of isolationism. I think both sides see this as a viable opportunity. Perhaps the United States, Europe, and Ukraine have more at stake than Russia does. It is the issue of economic concerns, of course, and sanctions that Russia is very concerned about. That's why it's bringing so many of these trade leaders and officials with it. But on the other hand, Ukraine is in a very tough spot. Europe is in a tough spot. And the United States, with U.S. President Donald Trump leading it, had promised to finish this war and find some kind of peaceful solution in the first 24 hours of his presidency during his second term. Well, that didn't happen. So all eyes are on this meeting. President Trump has tried to manage expectations, saying that he's not going to be speaking on behalf of Ukraine and whatnot. But nonetheless, you can't underestimate how important it is that these two are meeting, and on a very interesting grounds in Alaska. Russia controls still a small island on Alaska. It sort of, the plane that Putin comes from Russia sort of bypassed some hostile territory, so he didn't have to fly over those countries. So that was a plus for him. And also, again, you know, for the U.S. president, it'll give him the opportunities to sort of portray himself as that master peacemaker that he really wants to be.
Right, Susan, thanks for getting us the latest. We'll, of course, be tracking the high-stakes summit in Alaska very closely with you.
Yeah. Cool.
And well, we're also being joined by Senator for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibul, who's here with us. Siddhant, of course, I want to ask you as to where is India positioned at this point of time, with New Delhi closely watching the high-stakes summit in Alaska?
Well, it will be way past midnight when the leaders will be meeting in Alaska. But trust me, the policymakers will be awake all night to make sure and understand the outcomes of this high-stakes summit. Now, remember that India will be hoping that there could be a breather if there is a breakthrough. Donald Trump has time again in last few weeks and last few days has doubled down on India, not only in terms of the secondary tariffs, which are essentially sanctions for India importing energy from Russia, but also use terms like dead economy for India. So India will be looking for a positive outcome. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs has already welcomed the summit, and the Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Ranveer Jaiswal said that India endorses the summit that is going to take place. So for India, this is an important development in terms of how both the world powers work together. And of course, for India as well, in terms of being the fifth largest economy, importer of Russian energy, having good relationship with both US and with Russia, it is something that changes the geopolitical equation very fast. So this will be a long night here in India, in the national capital Delhi as well.
Right, Siddhant, of course, we will be closely tracking all that happens in Alaska. And just a short while from now, US President Donald Trump will be meeting his Russian counterpart. But thanks for getting us the latest right now. Well, US President Donald Trump came to power promising to end the Ukraine-Russia war in a span of just 24 hours. Well, it's been 7 months. The war has not stopped, but he's claimed credit for halting multiple conflicts, even saying that he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. Now, all eyes are on the Alaska summit as the US president's rhetoric on Russia swings from praise for President Putin to recent threats of sanctions. My colleague Siddharth MP sends us this report from Murmansk, Russian Arctic. Take a look.
Firstly, one of his poll promises, one of Donald Trump's poll promises was also to stop the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which has been raging on for over 3 years. Let's also keep in mind that President Donald Trump said that he would stop this conflict pretty much immediately, but it's been almost 6 to 7 months and there's not been much of a stop in this particular event. Let's also remember that this particular summit is being closely watched for various reasons. First thing is that President Trump claims that he has good equations with President Putin, but at the same time, in recent times, he's been talking about sanctions against Russia. He's been talking about making threats against Russia, but this is why this meeting is being closely watched. At one point in time, President Trump had good things to say about Russia and about President Putin, but in recent times, he's been threatening sanctions. So because of this flip-flop in his stance, it's also being closely watched as to what will be the real outcome of this meeting, how things will progress in Alaska. With video journalist Ajit from the Russian Arctic, Siddharth MP, WION World is One from Murmansk.
And well, India's space ambitions just got a fresh boost under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's bold vision. India seems to be gearing up to reach for the stars, and very soon such a mission could very well spring from its own soil. At India's 79th Independence Day celebrations at the Red Fort, Prime Minister Modi announced that India is working towards self-reliance in the space sector as well, similar to strides in other sectors. And a big example of that is India's preparations for Gaganyaan, its first indigenous human space flight mission, with a launch expected in the next 2 years in 2027. And that's not all. As per Prime Minister Modi, India is also on track to develop its own space station. The first module is scheduled for launch in 2028, with aims to complete the full station by 2035. Taking things few notches higher, India also plans to land on on the moon by 2040, and if successful, India will be joining the elite club of nations such as Russia, the US and China with independent indigenous human spaceflight capabilities. Prime Minister Modi also took note of the progress made with 300 space startups working worldwide. He also stressed on the power of youth in driving them to new heights. A quick look now at India's space success story in the recent past. It will tell you that after Moon and Mars, India has its eyes now set on orbital missions to other neighboring planets. In August 2023, India made history by successfully landing Chandrayaan-3 near the moon's south pole. This made it the first country to achieve such a feat. The mission also demonstrated the capability of Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, in precision lunar landing and roving. Then, in January this year, ISRO achieved its 100th rocket launch. It launched a navigation satellite showcasing India's indigenous cryogenic engine technology. And more recently, on July 30th, the Nisar satellite, worth nearly $1.3 billion, was launched in a joint Indo-US Earth observation mission with the purpose to monitor climate change, disasters and agriculture. In a landmark achievement, Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla completed a 20-day mission, including 18 days aboard the ISS, that's the International Space Station, as a part of the Axiom 4 mission. And this marked India's first human space flight since that of Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma in the year 1984. Praising this extraordinary feat, Prime Minister Modi said that Shukla's courage and determination has set a new record for billions to dream big. What's also unique about these space missions is the fact that they are cost-effective and they also have a proven record of reliability. And now, with India's space economy predicted to grow beyond $40 billion by 2040 and the government's unwavering commitment to expand space explorations, India could be looking at a quantum leap in the global space race. Shifting focus to Jammu and Kashmir, a massive cloudburst in Jammu and Kashmir's Kishtawar village has left at least 60 dead, including 2 CISF personnel. 100 people are reported injured, 38 of them in serious condition. Torrential rains from the deadly cloudburst triggered flash floods in the remote Himalayan village of Chausati. Multiple residential houses, temples, offices all swept away in the deluge. Hundreds of people remain missing and many feared to be trapped under the debris. Indian Army personnel, J&K Police and National Disaster Response Force are now conducting intense rescue operations at the site. Underway for a second day right now, with workers working overnight to rescue those who are still stuck.
Almost 98 to 100 people are injured. The government team is making every effort to evacuate the injured and provide them with assistance. The Chief Minister is himself supervising, and we are trying to provide all the helplines, phone numbers, and the administration has been informed about any assistance that is required from the medical department. Arrangements are being made for that.
पापा के साथ थी लड़का बहरा आर्मी वालों ने पकड़ लिया लड़की और पापा का कोई
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to J&K Chief Minister Omar Abdullah and Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha regarding the situation on the ground. The Prime Minister also assured that due humanitarian assistance will be provided to those affected. Well, earlier, J&K Chief Minister ordered a probe into the incident to assess if the disaster was a case of negligence. The flooding situation has also prompted other political reactions as well. Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh had earlier said in a tweet that he was en route to the cloudburst site to monitor the situation on ground. Not just that, the Russian embassy in India also expressed condolences to the families affected in the cloudburst. Even as evacuations are underway, with authorities trying relentlessly to bring as many people to safety as possible, weather officials forecast more heavy rains and floods in the area. It's also worth noting that this is the time when pilgrims had gathered in nearby points around Kishtawar for the annual Yatra to a Hindu temple that began in late July and is scheduled to end in September. Many pilgrims are believed to have been affected by the flood-like situation, with the bridge washed away by the torrent. In other news, on Poland's Armed Forces Day, its president, Karol Nawrocki, led a massive military parade in Warsaw, marking 105 years since Poland's victory over the Red Army in the Battle of Warsaw. With tanks, fighter jets and naval power on display, the Polish leader sent a message to Russia, reminding the world that Russia has been beaten before and can be beaten again. This spectacle comes just few hours before US President Donald Trump meets Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Talks that could shape the next phase of the Ukraine war. Take a look. With growing tensions in the South China Sea, the United States and the Philippines are in talks over a possible deployment of more missile launchers to the Philippines. The move aims to strengthen deterrence in the South China Sea and other regional flashpoints. However, as of now, no final decision has been reached by both the sides. Philippine ambassador to Washington says that the discussions focus on the U.S. Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System, or NMESIS, and these anti-ship missile launchers could be placed along coastal areas facing the South China Sea and other regions. The U.S. has already sent missile systems to the Philippines in recent years. In April last year, a Typhoon mid-range missile system was delivered to the north of the country for joint military exercises. And this year, an anti-ship missile launcher was deployed to Batanes, close to Taiwan. China has strongly criticized these deployments, accusing the U.S. of trying to contain its rise. Beijing has called on Manila to withdraw the launchers. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s government has rejected that demand. Well, Rommel Days made the comments during a trade and investment forum in Manila, saying that this is a part of the strong U.S. and Philippines defense partnership. Philippine officials also encouraged U.S. companies to invest in sectors from energy and telecommunication to even Navy shipbuilding. The talks on missile deployments to the Philippines come amid rising tensions in the South China Sea. On Wednesday, the U.S. conducted a freedom of navigation operation near Scarborough Shoal. It followed a collision earlier this week between Chinese Navy and Coast Guard ships and also a smaller Philippine Coast Guard vessel. The South China Sea is claimed almost entirely by China, but the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei and Taiwan have overlapping claims. In recent years, confrontations between Chinese and Philippine forces have sharply increased. Both Washington and Manila say that the focus is deterrence and not conflict. But with more military assets under discussion, tensions in the region show no signs of easing anytime soon. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court has allowed Mississippi to enforce a state law that requires the nation's largest social media companies to verify the age of the users and also obtain parental consent for minors to use these social media sites. According to the state, it's an effort that is intended to protect children from online predators. There are currently 18 U.S. states that have laws which requires age verification for certain online activities. These laws primarily focus on protecting minors from accessing harmful content like pornography or ensuring that they have parental consent to use social media. Now let's tell you what actually happened in Mississippi. NetChoice, which represents Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, X and YouTube, had urged the High Court to block enforcement of the state law, arguing that it infringed on users' First Amendment rights and that the age verification law is a violation of free speech. While the law in question in the case only affects people of Mississippi, many other U.S. states, both red and blue, have enacted similar requirements in recent years. And amid growing concerns over privacy and the safety of young people online, Mississippi authorities said that the state is responding to high-profile reports of sextortion and other online crimes. In one such case, a 16-year-old Mississippi boy committed suicide. He killed himself after an Instagram user posing as a female initiated conversation, a sexual encounter of sorts, and then demanded a $1,000 payment under threat of exposing their exchanges online. The latest law now requires that a social media platform should obtain express consent from a parent or a guardian of a minor before a child can open an account. It also states that regulated social media platforms must make commercially reasonable efforts to verify the age of these users. Well, China has kicked off the 3-day-long World Humanoid Robot Games, looking to showcase its advances in AI, artificial intelligence and robotics with 280 teams from 16 countries. Take a look. Intensified conflict in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo has cut off regular medical shipments, creating major challenges for diabetics who need insulin. The closure of Goma Airport has left patients and doctors scrambling for options. Historically, Goma Airport served as a key hub for distributing medical shipments from Kinshasa and other international locations. Healthcare providers at centers in Bukavu work persistently to find new sources for insulin. They ration their stocks and send doctors across the border to Rwanda to buy the supplies. Now, with supply routes blocked, doctors organize trips across the border into Rwanda, hoping to buy insulin and other medicines that are no longer reliably available in their local surroundings there.
Since the current crisis, access to insulin has been difficult. Even before, insulin access was expensive. For these children, I prescribe treatment, but they are not able to obtain it.
The crisis extends beyond the diabetes center. Doctors there describe a drug market marked by exorbitant prices and widespread lack of access, with some fearing retaliation from armed groups like the M23.
We don't have access to quality medications. Insulin is unavailable, and its price remains exorbitant, as can be seen across the market. In all depots, there is always a price increase. Even if we go to a neighboring country to get supplies, they too are often out of stock.
The M23 rebel group's resurgence since January has led to displacement of thousands. The collapse of ordinary transport and supply networks, it has only undermined diabetes treatment there, but also care for patients with chronic illnesses. Hospitals and clinics, they're now facing declining stocks of medicine, medical equipment, and even food for the patients there. Well, it's 4 years since the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan for the second time. Looking back, the group has brought in sweeping social restrictions, economic collapse, and global isolation. A highlight of the last year was Russia becoming the first country to formally recognize Afghanistan's Taliban government. But has that really changed much on the ground? Here's a report.
July 3rd, 2025. Russia officially accepts credentials of Afghanistan's new ambassador to Moscow. This comes months after Russia removed the Taliban from its list of banned terrorist organizations. Many hailed this as a potential turning point in Afghanistan's fortunes. On the ground, though, little has really improved for the people. In the last year, new bans and Islamist social restrictions have only tightened control on daily life. A continued and worsening crackdown on women's rights and freedoms. Girls and women remain banned from school and college, jobs, political life. Most cannot even make decisions within their own households. The results are devastating. Women are living shorter, less healthy lives. Violence against women grows unchecked. The UN says Afghanistan now has the second widest gender gap in the world, second only to Yemen. UN Women says the Taliban is closer than ever to achieving its vision of a society that completely erases women from public life. Public floggings and executions have resumed, besides more vicious checks on media and cultural activities. Amnesty International reports widespread human rights abuses. The World Bank says the economy has shrunk more than 20% since 2021. Most foreign development aid stopped after the Taliban takeover. Only humanitarian aid flows in, mainly from UN agencies. Major infrastructure projects are stalled. Public services face shortages of funds and trained staff. Making matters worse, the full weight of the United States cuts to aid to Afghanistan has finally become clear. Almost all the aid that was promised, at least $1.8 billion, will now not be given. Making matters worse, a massive influx from across borders from Iran and Pakistan. Both countries have put out deadlines and crackdowns against Afghan refugees, many of whom had lived there for generations. Over 2.1 million Afghans from Iran and Pakistan have returned in 2025. Returnees report experiencing discrimination, harassment, and wage losses. 4 years into Taliban 2.0, the picture remains grim at best. Global relief agencies continue to sound alarm bells. The citizen suffers on. 4 years into Taliban 2.0, is there a sense of global immunity and nonchalance? Has the nightmare become an acceptable part of life here?
And with that, we slip into a very short break, but we're leaving you with Gravitas Worldview. Thanks very much for staying with us. You are watching WION The World as well. Stay tuned.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
This week on Wings, we cover what happens at the Red Fort on Independence Day, the recent engineering marvels of Indian railways from south to north and even the northeast. We also give you a roundup of great national parks and museums that celebrate India's independence. Only on WION, World is One.
When I see these young women today leading troops, achieving so much, fighting jet planes, and it really fills me with a sense of fulfillment.
Not only these two particular days, 26th January or 15th August, every day he makes us proud. And I hope that we, both of us, making him proud too.
I was thinking about my unit ladies, my families.
I'm a soldier's wife is something that defines me and many other military wives. There is no better definition to me. This is exactly what I am and what I stand for.
मुझे और मेरी पूरी टीम को यहाँ पे ड्यूटी करने में बहुत गर्व महसूस होता है।
These female BSF soldiers posted on the line of control not only patrol the LOC and international border, but also go to the ambush site as well as if there is an infiltration pit near the line of control.
मुझे और मेरी पूरी टीम को यहाँ पे ड्यूटी करने में बहुत गर्व महसूस होता है.
Iran warns Israel of tracking its every move. If push comes to shove, Tehran is prepared to strike back. Border control or complete occupation amid protests and pushback, what is Netanyahu's real plan for Gaza? Yemen's Red Sea attacks come at a cost for its own people. Is peace out of reach? Famed footballer Ronaldo is now engaged, but how is he living under Saudi's laws unmarried?
Watch the West Asia Pulse with me, Radi Francis, only on WION, World is One.
On Inside South Asia this week, a look at some of the big moments that India is celebrating this Independence Day. From military wins to engineering feat and space victories. This is the story of India at 79. Osama bin Laden in a suit, that's what a former Pentagon official called Pakistan's Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir. Munir's mistimed jibes and barbs have raised some shocked eyebrows. Sweeping social restrictions, economic collapse and global isolation. We look at 4 years of Taliban's Afghanistan takeover. All this and much more at these times.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions.